Episode 1 of Black Doves begins with Christmas celebrations which overlook the death of a Chinese ambassador, which is making the news online. Outside a busy pub, a man called Jason Davies bides his time before walking home hurriedly. He's spooked as he walks along South Bank and phones Maggie, who in turn rings Philip. Jason is worried that he's being followed by someone. However, his two contacts are assassinated. With no other choice, Jason rings someone else as a desperation move, but it's too late. He's shot in the heart and left for dead on a bench. Now, it would appear that some of this stems from the death of that ambassador, and eventually this all collides into the story of Helen Webb. She's married to the Defense Secretary Wallace, who's obviously pretty stressed with everything that's been going on. At a big Christmas charity party, Helen is approached by a mysterious lady called Reed who brings up Jason's death. It turns out she's been having an affair with him for around 3 months, and she claims that it's love, rather than any other motivation. Helen seems to be hiding something, but apparently Jason gave her a Christmas present which she hasn't opened yet. Whether this is relevant or not remains to be seen. The trouble is, Helen could be a target, and it's clear she's working undercover in Downing Street, on a job. For now, Reed tells her that the family are safe and she doesn't need to leave, but mostly because they don't have anyone else at the organization to take over. Helen does her job well, despite getting sloppy with this affair, as she's been feeding them government secrets for nearly 10 years. However, Reed is not taking any chances, so she calls in a contact called Sam from Rome to hunt the assassins that could be after Helen. When Wallace is called in for urgent matters at the office, Helen decides to dig into Jason's world. She shows up at his apartment, claiming to be his partner. After listening to one of the voicemail messages, the police show at the door. Unfortunately, they're actually assassins in disguise. Helen manages to take them both out, although the second takes an absolute age to fire her gun and could have easily killed her. Anyway, the trio scuffle around the apartment, but it's Sam who makes the difference. With a shotgun in hand, he shoots one of them, leaving Helen a bloody mess. She grabs a hidden hard drive from the vents and takes off with Sam. Helen isn't exactly happy in this relationship with Wallace, but she's finding it hard to leave given she now has 2 children, and she's got a pretty good life, all things considered. She's also on course to be the next PM's wife too. Helen does eventually head home, where she boots up the hard drive. Along with all their old messages, which they were supposed to delete, are a number of missed calls from a mysterious number, and word to Philip that someone called Sai has been caught on video footage. As fate would have it, it's not just Helen who's having an affair here. Hacking into Wallace's computer, Helen soon learns that he's having a cheeky fling with his new assistant, Danny. As for Sam, he finds the sniper's location and, subsequently, the bullet casing. He visits his contact, George, needing to run prints and DNA. It's done quickly, and we get a name too. Elmore Fitch. Helen heads off to visit Reed at the cinema, who warns her off from getting too involved. She hands over a newspaper with the number Jason rang and encourages her to follow up this lead. This is particularly troubling because the Chinese call foul play on the ambassador's death. Even worse, her daughter Kai Ming Chun is missing. Episode 2 of Black Doves begins with us in the past. Helen, whose real name is Daisy, heads off for a translation job. During the interview, we learn that Helen's parents are deceased, while she has a stepsister called Bonnie. She's actually serving a life sentence and is behind bars right as Helen left the country, which definitely seems a bit suspicious. However, despite not getting the job, she is given Reed's phone number and told to ring and reveal that they've found a little black dove. Now, Helen is fluent in French, German, and Russian, and she's recruited by Reed to be one of their agents, a spy out in the field. Reed knows she has some Jason Bourne-esque skills here and is very much a survivor. Under the new name of Helen, she shows up to see Wallace at a big speech, but he's not exactly endearing in front of crowds. It doesn't take long for Helen to sleep with Wallace, and she soon copies the files from his laptop and scarpers. Her teammate here is Sam, whom she hands the info over to. The trouble is, Helen isn't exactly adept at her job, and she ends up dead naming her real name in the car and also leaves her lighter, a memorabilia her mom gave, in Wallace's hotel room. This decision eventually paves way for a whole life as she returns to Wallace. Back in the present, Helen heads out with Sam. It turns out Elmore Fitch is actually a former marksman for the SAS. There's a bit of humor that seeps in here, as it turns out Sam is drunk and slurring his words just a bit after a line of ketamine, which he's mistakenly thought was cocaine after dinner with friends. Whoopsie. The pair show up at Elmore's place and immediately realize they've walked right into a trap. The flat is prone to blow, with the pair intentionally led here with the intent on taking them out with a bomb. Thankfully, they manage to jump out the window and land in the canal before they meet an untimely death. Helen does eventually head back home, but she's not alone. Elmore shows up and reveals that he's after a video camera, which Kai Ming has. He admits to being hired by shadowy employers and outright admits to killing Jason. Helen gets the jump on Elmore, who reveals he doesn't know who hired him for the job. However, he was told to complete it under 24 hours and allowed to name a price. He chose $100K. Getting nowhere, Helen kills Elmore outside in the garden shed and cleans up the mess downstairs. Meanwhile, Sam finds himself face-to-face with some old acquaintances from the past. This includes a woman called Lenny and her 2 guards. Sam used to be one of her triggermen, and he owes her for something relating to a guy called Hector Newman. Sam didn't kill him when he was supposed to, so as a result, Lenny is not happy. If he doesn't go and finish the job, then they're going after his ex, Michael, whom Sam has a soft spot for. Turns out this Hector character is actually holding Kai Ming hostage. But before we connect the dots on this, Sam is called into a meeting with Reed and Helen in a parking lot. They bring up what's transpired, along with how Kai Ming is the key to all of this. She's the connection to the different people that have been killed, so it also means that Helen is now a target. Helen does some research and seems to deduce that this SY is actually Stephen Yerrick, the police commissioner. After planting a bug at Jason's funeral, Helen listens in from her car as Stephen and Wallace discuss the implications of the ambassador's death. Philip contacted Wallace because he has footage of Stephen, which could well be incriminating. Wallace doesn't learn anything, but Stephen's nonchalant attitude seems to hint at him hiding something. This is especially prevalent given the Americans could be behind this, pulling the strings and leading to another war. As for Sam, he heads over to finish the job for Lenny. However, when he shows up, the place is a bloodbath. There are dead bodies everywhere, and also a video camera pointed to a mattress where Kai Ming is dosed and out of it. On the video footage, a gunfight breaks out, and Hector himself looks at the camera. "Shit," Sam says in exasperation. Episode 3 of Black Doves begins with Sam back in 2014. This actually happens to be right at the moment Helen heads back inside the hotel. Sam returns to Reed, and she brings up how he's been pestering her to be part of the organization. Reed is bemused at him offering to be a triggerman for Lenny and points out that no one really knows if they can do it until they try. If Sam does work with Lenny, he can't work for Reed, as their 2 objectives don't align. Reed is all about gaining information espionage style. Lenny is all about killing and getting the job done. Sam is briefed by Lenny, who's similarly bemused that this is his first time doing a job like this. Still, Sam shows up at the scheduled spot and kills his target. However, his hands are shaking and Lenny soon rings, promising that this will be the hardest kill he completes. 6 months later, Sam trains Helen in how to fight and kill. This is also where he first meets Michael too, and it seems to be love at first sight as they lock eyes across the bar. As fate would have it, their first dinner is actually at the same restaurant he completed his first hit at. Fast forward to 2017, and both Michael and Sam are getting along like a house on fire. They're very much an item, while Helen is also cozying up to Wallace and settling into her job. In fact, news breaks of the Conservatives winning a majority and, subsequently, Wallace and Helen back in the limelight. Sam is very much in the deep with Lenny, and his latest job is taking out the Newman brothers. There are 3 of them, and a 4th called Hector, but she doesn't have a picture. However, Lenny does specifically ask him to kill the boy too. And yes, Hector is very much a kid. In the back seat, after killing all 3 brothers, Sam opens up the door and finds he can't kill an innocent. He can't do it, and thus, this explains why Lenny is not happy in the present. The next morning, an assassin breaks into Sam's apartment. He manages to take the first guy out, but it's clear that Hector is the one orchestrating this as several cars rocks up downstairs. It also explains why Sam went on the run initially. Back in the present, Sam speaks to Lenny about what he's found. Hector appears to be in Peckham, holding up with the troops in his fortress, but Lenny is worried. She knows he has a good heart, and that, combined with blood on his hands, doesn't make a great combination, especially not in this field of work. Sam recruits the two cold assassins working alongside Lenny, Williams and Eleanor, to storm the base with him before meeting Helen for coffee. This isn't just some chit-chat, though, as Helen brings up the recording and believes they need to hone in on Stephen Yerrick to get answers. At the school nativity, Sam confronts Stephen and makes him sweat. At least to begin with anyway. Stephen refuses to disclose who he's working with, including a number saved as Repair Shop in his phone. Stephen eventually walks away, claiming that he can't help. Sam lets him go, but dumps Stephen's phone inside Jacqueline's bag. Helen decides to message Repair Shop, promising that she'll find them. Only, they get a message back saying the same. The cat and mouse chase is on. Helen is rattled, but she puts on her game face and heads out for the evening soiree with Wallace. Wallace has a meeting with the Chinese, who obviously aren't too happy about everything going down. In the kitchen, the Chinese bring up how they believe the police are complicit in the crime of covering up the ambassador's death. They have footage from outside Kai Ming's apartment, where a man named Cole Atwood fled the scene, an hour before Kai Ming was kidnapped. Cole is a CIA agent and also Kai Ming's boyfriend. Hadi managed to trace his movements from the murder scene all the way back to the American embassy, and he hasn't left since. The thing is, there's no footage of what happened inside Kai Ming's apartment, almost as if it's been erased, and this implicates Cole and the Americans. Now, given the Americans seem to be connected to all of this, the Chinese want a solution, and they want it now. In the wake of this, Helen speaks to Danny, Wallace's assistant. She's wearing some funky socks, linked back to the flirting done over messages where Helen perceived this was about underwear. Helen doesn't broach the subject, though, as she receives a call from Repair Shop, with footage of Stephen being brutally tortured and then murdered. Both Helen and Wallace are called away. But as they leave, Danny claims that when a door closes, a window opens, and that phrase strikes a chord with her. This isn't the first time that Helen has had to up and leave quickly, though. That incident in the past with Michael we left off during the flashbacks earlier? Well, Sam phoned Helen and had her help get Michael out. Sam ended up shot in the process, but it also solidified that Helen would stay in this line of work and too deep to go now. In the present, Sam shows up with Williams and Eleanor, ready to shoot Hector's base up and take out our guy once and for all. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and support this channel. Episode 5 of Black Doves begins with us in the past, and following Williams as she fled from the scene during her partner being killed at the apartment. She shows up to see Eleanor, who's down on the barge. Williams offered the Eleanor to be a partner in future to work properly. On the other hand, Eleanor also feels lonely and accepts her offer to work altogether. Eleanor asks for help, and Williams enlists her help almost immediately. Meanwhile, Eleanor and William throw some Marvel humor out as they prep for the Clark attack. With Kai Ming hiding in the bath, the pair work to try and thwart their attackers. Back in the present, Wallace leaves Danny as he has a meeting with the Chinese ambassador. The CIA chief is here too, and he's not happy about the attack against the embassy. The U.S. believes the Chinese are responsible, while the UK are vehemently against supplying military contracts to the Chinese. It's out the question. This definitely ramps up the political stakes here, and right now we're at a stalemate. After stealing a black cab, Sam, Cole, and Helen flee from their captors and show up at the safe house, which is obviously under attack from the Clarks. Helen and Cole remain in the car, while Sam scrambles inside. All of this ends with the Clarks getting Kai Ming and Eleanor, while Williams is saved by Sam. Williams is injured, and Helen decides they need to hold out at Michael's place for safety, as it's the only safe place they have left. Michael is not happy with all of this being brought to his doorstep, but he begrudgingly agrees to help all the same. The Clarks, whom we now know are behind the Repair Shop number, ring and want to strike a deal. They want the digital recording device in exchange for saving Kai Ming and Eleanor. Oh, and if Helen and the others don't follow through, then everyone will die. Helen suggests that the wild card here could be Trent, and if Cole doesn't follow through, then he could be killed by the Sam to shoot you in the back of head. We don't need you more. Then Sam said, find the fucking guy Trent. In secret, Helen speaks to Sam and reveals that she's messed up her end of the deal, admitting that before his death, she revealed to Jason exactly who she is. Apparently nothing was going to change between them, but a week later, Jason ended up dead. It doesn't seem like a coincidence, does it? It appears as if everything is connected here. Helen is flustered when her nanny calls, though, as Wallace is not at home, so Helen decided to go home. And Helen said to Sam, "Find Trent. He is only the key to get Alex Clark." When Helen came back, Wallace is not particularly happy about her not being home and tries to broach the subject of her affair. Wallace asks to Helen, "Are you happy with our relation?" She responds that, "Yeah, I am happy." Wallace said, "Is everything is perfect?" Helen said, "You are not perfect. We are not perfect, but I am supportive." However, Officer Perriman shows up that night and questions her involvement with the U.S. Embassy. Her name has set off a red flag, but Helen doesn't elaborate further, as she needs to put the kids to bed. And then Perriman go back. Helen received a call of Reed. It's clear that Wallace is suspicious, and he tells her he loves her and their family together. Helen looks close to actually admitting the truth, but instead she received a call and walks out to meet Reed that night, who wants to talk. Helen asks to Reed, "Are you working for Chinese?" Reed admits to working with the Chinese, but similarly, she doesn't seem to be completely forthright. Helen brings up how the Clarks are behind this, and they need to take them out. Reed believes they're way too insulated, and she won't get anywhere with this line of thinking. The drama here, though, stems from Jason's death and the embassy's interest in Helen. Reed is concerned that Helen has broken their rules about the doves, and she gives an ultimatum over handing over Cole at 6:30 tomorrow morning at Albert Embankment before everything escalates into an international incident. When Helen leaves, Reed rings Sam, right in the middle of his heart-to-heart with Michael. She has a final job for him: kill Alex Clark. He refuses to do so, but Reed is convinced that Helen has got too close to something too big. The Black Doves need to be protected, so this would finish the job. Cole Atwood is also part of this too, and he needs to be brought in. The thing is, Atwood is gone. Later on, we soon learn that he's returned to the embassy. Sam shows up to kill Alex Clark, but of course she's ready for him and knocks him out with her right-hand man. As for Danny, it's now clear that she's a dove, and Reed decides to let her off the leash. Helen recalls the past with some memories with Jason. Jason gave her a gift of knuckles. Helen realizes where the recording device is and finds it at the jeweler's store, locked in the vault. However, Danny shows just as she's about to leave. Helen calls out Danny for being desperate, and the pair end up fighting. It doesn't last long, though, as Helen comes out on top. Helen said to the Danny, "When you see the Reed, you tell her that if you want to replace me, she'd better come and do it face to face." So, what's on the device? Well, it's footage of Trent killing Chun, Chinese ambassador, after he tried to scare him off from getting involved with Kai Ming. Steven Yerrick showed up with his goons, deciding to cover it up with a drug overdose. And it's clear that the PM is also involved in this too, because Yerrick called the Prime Minister to discuss the whole matter that was existed. Episode 6 of Black Doves begins with Sam waking up after being knocked out. He looks up to find Eleanor and Kai Ming both tied to chairs. As for Helen, she rings Reed and told her that you sent a teenager, Danny, to kill me. Then Reed responded that I want to fix it. Helen said that next time, send an experienced and competent girl and leave the Sam because he is loyal. Reed said, I gave him a chance to show his loyalty. I sent him the Alex Clark's address to kill him. Reed gives a chance to Helen to bring a recording device. Helen decided to kill all those people who killed Jason, Maggie, Philip, Commissioner Yerrick, and frighten my children. Helen calls the Williams to come outside and force her to be together to find the Trent. Helen asked about the Sam to William. William said no idea. Then Helen told that we'll meet to Clark with this drive at midday. The pair head off to see Trent. They show him the surveillance footage and threaten him to call his mother Alex because he has trapped my friends. Helen said to his mother the drop-off will be in 1 hour. You're going to be there in person. If you're not or my friend are hurt in any way, then it will lead to a very bad news for the Trent here. He eventually gets them a meet with Alex. With the meet going down, Reed plays Puppet Master and lets Mr. Reed know about the transfer about to go down. As for Cole, he returns to the embassy in enough time to head out the door for the meet. Now, Helen stashes her gun inside Trent's jacket pocket before they arrive right at the spot where the others are being held hostage in the middle of London. Helen meet and save her friends. As they look set to leave, Alex Clark shows up at the door. Now, at this point, Helen brandishes the recorder from her pocket and hands it over because this is an exchange meeting. Helen told to the Alex that Ambassador fell and hit his head. He was killed by accidentally. Alex checks over the footage for herself and sees it's legit, and unfortunately Kai Ming also sees her dad being killed by Trent too. While this is going on, Wallace receives word of the tape and brings this news to the PM that Americans think that there's a tape recording of Ambassador death. He seems suspiciously distracted and messages his contact, telling them the Americans are on the way. His contact? None other than the Clarks. Helen grabs the gun from Trent's pocket and wants to know the cause of murder of Jason. Sam advised to Helen not to do that. Alex warns not to pull the trigger. If she does, it'll cause a catastrophic chain of events that will crumble everything around them. However, it soon becomes clear that it wasn't Alex who killed Jason. It was Trent. He wanted to try and fix what he'd done with the ambassador, and he worked against his family's interests. While the U.S. and the Chinese are outside at loggerheads with one another, there's a tense standoff inside. Eventually, all-out chaos ensues. Sam grabs the gun, kills Alex's bodyguard, then Alex, and finally Trent, while outside all the agents for both the Chinese and the U.S. are killed, save for Cole. Back inside, Helen is angry and believes Trent was her kill, but Sam hugs her and tells her it's over. Well, it's not. They receive a call saying they're being watched, and they will be held responsible. Cole survives the bloodbath outside, just in time for Helen to hand over the recording. This helps the Chinese back down, while all the drama is pinned on Stephen Yerrick. He also implicated some people on the tape, including the PM himself. This also means that Wallace is in place to be the next prime minister, much sooner than expected. That night, Helen meets Reed at the local church. She brings up the news about Alex Clark and feeds back what really happened. Turns out there's someone who was watching the ambassador's family this whole time. This was Maggie. She'd been selling stories about Kai Ming to the press for extra cash when MI5 tapped her up. She was the one who planted the camera in Kai Ming's flat, and when she checked the footage, she also told Philip, which in turn basically led to a chain of events that left a big trail, with Jason, Yerrick, and subsequently Helen all thrown into the mix and needing to be killed to keep all of this quiet. Jason, as it turns out, was an agent working for MI5. However, he lied for Helen and never revealed anything about her being a dove. One day before his murder, within his report of investigation about Helen, he did not find any evidence that you're a spy. So, Jason simply called her a loyal citizen and wife. Jason saved her at great risk to himself, which seems to confirm that he really did have feelings for her. Reed hands over a USB drive which holds Jason's real self, a Christmas present of sorts to her black dove, before leaving. Helen is going to be inside Downing Street before long, and she needs to get to work. Helen decides not to go digging into Jason's past, and drops the drive into the water. As for Sam, he returns to Michael and seems content that everything is over. However, it's obviously not because we still have 20 minutes left of the episode. Yep, we've got one more loose end to tie up. Hector. He happens to be inside Michael's apartment, and he brings up his past. He hated his brothers, but obviously they were also blood too, so he's at a bit of a conundrum. Hector had been conflicted for a long time, unsure whether Sam was his guardian angel or his worst enemy. Well, he's come to a decisions and subsequently offers him a job. With the Clarks taking a big hit, Sam could come and work for him, and they can try to fight off what's coming. And there is undoubtedly a lot of heat coming their way now. When he leaves, Michael sees the final part of this meeting and confronts Sam. The pair have a final goodbye kiss and part ways, with Sam realizing he's never going to get his happily ever after. Sam shows up to see Lenny and points a gun at her, deciding they should just let bygones be bygones. Sam eventually doesn't kill Lenny, but it's unclear whether he trusts that she'll leave him alone or not. We'll have to wait and see. As for Helen, she heads home and Wallace holds her hand as they watch the kids open presents and gifts. On Christmas morning, Helen decides Sam should come join them. Sam comes on her invitation and brought some gifts for her kids. He meets with Wallace. After taking some refreshments, Helen asks to Sam, So what now? Sam is sticking around in London for a while, and he clarifies that he would do this every time to protect her. As the episode closes out, Williams, Kai Ming, and Eleanor all hang out together too. While we get a montage showing Reed with her daughter. We also see the Helen, Wallace with his kids, and Sam around the dining table. Subscribe this channel for all worldwide web series recap.